Hello, coffee culture family. I'm here today with Laura Cathcart Robbins, and I found her through a friend. I'm all about connection. As you know, the podcast is all about our connection through the coffee meetup, but sometimes it's not the coffee meetup. And we have a mutual friend who also has been on this show, Christopher Lewis. And so we're going to talk a little bit about connection through friends and maybe through the fact that we both were at a podcasting conference but didn't meet each other there. So we'll probably dive into that a little bit. But what I'd like to say, what I learned a little bit from combing through articles that Laura wrote and listening some reels on Instagram, I encourage you to go follow her. And I actually scraped a little bit of her language from here, so I'm not taking credit for this, but she turned a viral essay into a podcast called The Only One in the Room. And she turned her pain into pages with a memoir called Stash that's coming out shortly. So we are going to dive in. And I just want to present and say hello to Laura. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show, Holly. I am good. Actually, today my memoir is out. Today it is out in the world.
Hey.
Today is pub day. Yeah.
Oh, how did I plan that? I got COVID and I had to push her out a week. Who knew
Yeah.
it would land on the day that
On
her book
the
came on the
book
shelves?
birthday it is today.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm so
So
excited. That's a cool connection.
yeah, it really is. And yes, I Christopher is just he is one of those great connectors. Like he's always looking to see, he could be a matchmaker, right? Well,
Mhm,
he's in dating, so
mhm, mhm, he's in the
so he
perfect
is a
place.
matchmaker in a way. But yeah, I'm so glad that he connected us and thank you for that intro. That was a really unique intro, actually. I like the way you kind of cobbled it together. And um yes, my viral article turned into this podcast called The Only One in the Room. And Stash, My Life in Hiding, my debut memoir, Atria Simon and Schuster, is out right now. And it's an addiction memoir. It's a memoir about ending a marriage. It's a memoir about me as a mom fighting to be in my kids' lives. It's a memoir about falling in love. So it has like all those themes in it. It also comes from the place of privilege, that intersection of privilege and race and addiction, which is unique. So I'm excited that it's out in the world and excited to share my story with people and excited to talk about coffee.
All right, so let's start with something easy before we
Yeah.
dive into the deep stuff. So you're a coffee drinker?
So yeah, let me tell you a little bit my journey with coffee
I
about
would
my
love that.
rather. Never drank coffee until I was in my 20s. In the 90s, I had the only Black-owned PR entertainment PR firm in Los Angeles. And so it was quite happening. I was like on retainer with all the major studios and labels, and I did all their urban acts. I'm putting air quotes around that for people who are just listening. That means Black. Um, so if they had a Black show or a Black artist, I would be handed part of their publicity or all of it to handle. And it was quite the time. But what happened when I started running my own company was my hours were from like 6 in the morning because I'm in LA and a lot of my clients were back east. So I'd be in the office at 6 or 6:30 and then there'd be parties and events. So I was tired. And so,
Tiny bit.
yeah, so coffee was that 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. necessity then. And the way that I drank it, because I didn't like the taste, was with about 2 to 3 inches of sugar in the bottom of the cup. Yes, I
Have
know.
some coffee
And
with my sugar.
yes, I wanted coffee ice cream. So that's basically
Yes.
what I made was coffee ice cream. And I would drink a couple cups every day. And I did that for years with all that sugar into my 40s. And then when I was 44 when I got sober, that was almost 15 years ago. And and so coffee became absolutely the way to connect with people then, because in the recovery community, it's all about meeting for coffee. It's
Mhm,
coffee after the meeting, it's coffee before the meeting, it's coffee. That's how you connect because we don't meet for drinks anymore, right?
mhm, mhm.
Alcoholic beverages. So we meet for coffee. So every coffee house became like a haven for me during that
Mm,
time, especially those first couple years.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and it's still, it's like if there's someone that's new to the program and I want to sit down with them, I'm not taking them to dinner. I'm not taking them to lunch. I'm going to take them to coffee.
I love this.
Yeah,
This was the premise behind my show is that the coffee meetup is merely an excuse to be together, to gather, and to hold each other up. Eh, and that's exactly what you were doing. But nobody really got it when I explained to them coffee culture.
yes.
It's about the meetup. It's also about the brew if you like it.
Right.
But essentially it's about connection, right? We're all looking for it some way, and coffee is just a tool.
It is absolutely about connection. And there's something about socializing without a beverage that makes other people uncomfortable. Like,
Mm.
it's the first thing, right? You ask somebody that when they come into your home, can I offer you a drink?
Mhm.
And so if you don't take water and you don't take an alcoholic beverage, then people are like, well, I want to give you something. I want something in your hand. When you're like
Mhm.
walking around a party, people want some kind of beverage in your hand. So coffee is a really good way to kind of comfort other people about your needs,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And that need to have something in your hand or to offer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's our connection to hospitality.
Yes.
It shows that we're inviting somebody in to spend some time with us, at least the amount of time it takes to have your glass of water, your coffee. But
Yeah.
it's all part of it, right?
It's part of polite society, I think,
Mm.
to imbibe something, like to partake that way.
Mhm.
And so the other part of my coffee journey is when I was 47, got this really weird heart pounding for about 7 days from the time that I woke up until about 6 o'clock at night. And it scared me. I have not, as far as I know, I didn't have any experience with anxiety, but this is what I read about. But this didn't feel like my mind. It just felt like my heart. So I went to the doctor, one of my doctors, and he's like, why don't you stop coffee and see what happens?
Mhm.
Um, so I did, and it went away the next day. Never had it again.
Wow.
No idea whether or not it was actually tied to that. It could have
Mhm.
been like a temporary thing. So since I've been 47, I'm 58 now. I haven't had caffeine, but I still have a morning cup of coffee. It's just decaf because I
Mhm.
love the ritual. I
Yes.
love getting up. So I have it with oat milk. I have
Mhm.
a oat milk. I make an oat milk decaf latte at home. And that's what I
Mm.
order when I go out. That's my coffee order
That
when
sounds
I go out.
great.
It's so yummy, and I don't
Mhm.
put any sugar in it. So the days of the
Ah, coffee
introduced
ice cream
sugar are
gone.
gone.
Oh,
And
do you
so
know
it's
who
like,
makes
yeah.
Blue Bottle? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
Blue
no, go ahead.
Bottle, though, makes a really lovely cappuccino or latte with oat milk. So just if
Oh,
you're ever
nice,
going
nice.
around.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm sure you know a lot about every coffee drink.
Probably too much.
Yeah,
I love it, and I'm a coffee snob. Like I like make no apologies. Like I like good coffee. I really do.
yeah,
But, and I love the ritual. That's my morning thing too. I have a French press and it's very, there's a certain amount of scoops that go in with the hot water and you stir it up and you wait 4 minutes and that 4 minutes I'm stretching and it's just part of my morning routine, and, yeah,
yeah.
I'm a
I
coffee
totally
snob.
get that. It's
Yeah.
it's mine too. It's part of I do the meditation. I work out 5 days a week. I'm in my workout clothes because I worked out. I think
Mhm.
you and I had talked about it. I was like, "Is it on video?" Because I was trying to
Yeah.
figure out, like, when I was gonna work out, but
Oh, sorry.
no, no, it's
I have
fine.
my workout shirt underneath because 'cause I'm going to, like, a Pilates class for my first time later, so I'm like, "Just gonna wear my clothes."
Yeah, yeah, I haven't ever done Pilates, but,
Me neither. This is my first time.
it was your first time ever? Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alright.
I've done mat Pilates, which I hate because I have neck issues and I just end up hurting my neck. But this is with the reformer, which I've never done. I've heard great things about it. And so I guess I'm a Pilates reformer virgin today. I
Ah,
break.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I'll let you know how it goes so you can decide if you want to do it. But I'd love to dive a little deeper, if you're okay with that. I know my coffee culture family does love coffee conversation, but I definitely want to. You have such an incredible history, and today your book is out, which is just crazy. I'm so happy that we're here together for that. If I had known, I would have like had balloons or something here, but
I'll
anyway.
imagine them.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So, what I'd like to do is, you know, there was a part that I caught in one of your Instagram reels, um, which go immediately deep. So people go watch them. But I would like you to talk about your book, but there was something that stood out for me in one of the reels. So I'm going to go back to it. I'm not going to say it yet. I want to see if it actually just comes up.
Okay.
Um, but would you like to share a little bit about, it's natural for your writing to become a podcast. I think you see like the value of your content and you want it in people's ears as well. Um, but to turn it into a memoir, that's a bigger fish to fry. Like that's a lot of work making a book. So, what made you decide to do all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the other way around. Um, so when I've I've been a writer, like as far as I can remember. I had like a little line a day diary when I was like 6 and 7 that I wrote in. I thought I wrote in it every day. I recently like unearthed it from a trunk, and it was pretty sporadic actually. But in my
Okay.
mind, I was writing every day. But I did that for years, and I wrote stories and always writing. And then once I got sober, I lost the ability to read or write. And that sounds really like hyperbolic, but it's not that I typed emails, I wrote thank you notes, but I couldn't read or write for pleasure anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, there was no, it was like something had snapped shut in me or gone dormant. And the first like 5 years of sobriety, I was kind of like, okay, maybe this will come back. There were other priorities for my system to come back online first.
Mhm.
And so there's a repair going on, so this will probably come back at some point. And it really didn't feel like it was going to, so I started taking writing classes, and it was really hard for me because I was frustrated with the fact that everybody else seemed to be just like flowing in class and writing, and I could barely get anything down on the page. And what I got down honestly wasn't very good, and it was short, and it wasn't honest, and it wasn't real. Like I could tell all these things, but I couldn't do any better. But I kept going and I kept going, and I took a book proposal class in 2016. I didn't know what I wanted to write about, but I wanted to see like how you put together a book proposal. And in this really like long, I covered years and years and years of my life in this proposal. In the middle of that was this really meaty, tender, vulnerable story of me in the bottom, at the bottom, like rock bottom in my addiction, being in the middle of a divorce at that time, going to treatment for that, and then meeting someone and not like hooking up with them, but against my will, falling in love with them.
Mm.
And like, this can't be anything because this is ridiculous. Like, we met in drug treatment in another state. This
Mm.
can't be. So, like, me kind of battling myself and outside circumstances. And so that was in the middle of this very long proposal I did. The proposal was rejected by everyone I sent it to. But one of the rejections, uh, this very generous agent named Anjali Singh, she didn't send me a form letter back. She said, "You're a beautiful writer, but memoir is the hardest thing to sell and no one knows who you are. So these are the things I suggest. You get some articles published, maybe start a podcast, do storytelling, look at the moth, build an author's platform. You cannot sell a book, not a memoir, unless you have a platform.
Interesting.
And yeah, really interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing she said was start a blog. That was the first thing she said. Because basically she had looked me up and couldn't find me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anything to show online. And so, and she said speaking engagements too. So I was stunned that she took the time to write that to me. I tried to write her again and it bounced back, like submissions are closed until whatever. So I never got back in touch with her, but I started that blog that year and I did it every week for 2 years. It was quite painful because I still couldn't write very well.
Mm.
I was just like, let me just get something out there. Let me get into this exercise. And the writers retreat I went to in 2018, that was Elizabeth Gilbert and Cheryl Strayed.
God, I love them.
Me too.
Was that at like Crapallo or something? Because they did it there often, or at least Elizabeth Gilbert did.
Yeah, this was at 1440 Multiversity in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, similar.
And it was 3 days. And so, and they said bring blank notebooks, like at least 4. I'm like, 4 blank notebooks. Yeah.
I can't even write a card. Okay.
Right. And so, but I did, I brought the notebooks and I was in a writer's group at that time with women I had never met in person. And we all went. We all went to this thing, which was really cool. So I had this amazing experience. There were 600 people there, but I was the only Black one.
What?
Out of all, even the people that worked there, Holly, like there
I didn't
were,
see that coming.
yeah. So I had this dual experience, right? I was with these 2 writers whose books I keep on my desk that I admire so much. I was learning so much. I filled up those notebooks with all the writing assignments they gave us, but I had no affinity. And it was the first time for me ever that I'd been in a space with that many people and been the only one.
Interesting. Did you find solace though in the group of women that you traveled to this event with? Because you said they were your original group, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I had a great time. It was wonderful sitting with them, but they're all white.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because it wasn't just like a business conference, right? Where we were like learning an operating system. We were being asked to be vulnerable with each other. And like, for instance, I had these 2 experiences. One where we were sectioned off into groups. So I wasn't with my writers group and we had a break and I kind of walked over to this group I knew they were moms because I'd heard them talking before and I kind of joined them. And one of them was bragging about how her son had been pulled over by the police and argued his way out of a ticket and how proud she was of him. And
Mm.
I couldn't back away from that group fast enough. I didn't
Yeah.
want them to see my tears.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of them kind of got it and they changed the subject, but there was no one for me to then go, can you believe what just happened?
Yeah. Because you're thinking my sons would not have had that experience.
Oh, no. I
Yeah.
mean, I would, it might be the end of them if they ever
Oh,
did.
I
And they
have
never would.
goosebumps. That's crazy.
They never
Wow.
would. And then we had another assignment where we were paired with 300 of us or 300 and something of us where everyone was paired off. And we sat on the floor and faced each other and we were supposed to read our assignments to each other. And I picked up my notebook to read and I said, we had to write a letter to somebody and I wrote it to Black church families. I don't even remember what the assignment was, but we had to write to a category of people. And as soon as I said the words, my partner put down her notebook and started bawling. And she went on we had 5 minutes. And she filled the entire 5 minutes by saying, I feel so sorry for African Americans. I voted for so-and-so. I cried when that Black guy got killed. And she didn't read me her assignment. She didn't let me read mine. And she just kind of pity spewed all over me. She said she felt so sorry for me for being Black and felt guilty for the white people of this country. It was so inappropriate. It was
Too
so
much. Yeah.
burdensome. And again, I had no affinity. There was no one. This was the same conference. There was no one I could turn to and say, can you believe what just happened to me? So I wrote about it when I got home, submitted it to the Huffington Post. That's the article that went viral. So,
Okay.
and from that, the idea, because a lot of the comments I got back were hashtag the only one in the room, because that's what I was. I was the only one in
Hmm.
the room. So it was apparently a very popular hashtag. I didn't know that. So when I sat down with Scott, we were thinking about the next step, in my author's platform, which was the podcast. We're like, why don't we call it this? Why don't we call it the only one in the room and tell those stories?
Perfect.
Not just, the story of the Black woman in a room full of 600 white people, but, you know, anybody who's ever felt alone in a room full of people, and tell those stories.
Well, and it started for you at a very young age when you started school. I did read a little article about that. Do you want to share that? I'm not going to give my version. I'd rather it
Oh,
come from you.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's been my whole life. I've been the only Black person in most of the spaces. I was the only Black kid in my school for a while. And then after that, they were like 3 grades younger than me. So I didn't have a Black classmate or a Black peer for longer than that. However, it was fine.
Mhm.
Like I had a lovely childhood in Cambridge, Massachusetts at the Cambridge Montessori School. I had really good friends. I was super social. I didn't miss the absence. I didn't the absence of someone that looked like me wasn't as impactful as it was later on.
Hmm.
But I also got used to being the only Black person. And I think the article you're talking about is the article I wrote about my principal, Jackie
Yeah.
Scott. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so yeah, my mom had switched schools. She had switched schools because there was no one Black there. I think I had gone to like 4 schools in Cambridge. And when there was a promise that there would be more Black students, and when that promise wasn't fulfilled, my mom pulled me out. And finally, she found the Cambridge Montessori School. And I was looking around when I first got there, and it was like the Brady Bunch set. It was like all these. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the Brady Bunch was a really iconic show in the 70s, where it was a family with 3 boys and 3 girls, and the girls all had long blonde hair. And the boys were, just, they were all white kids. But the hair was this really big thing because they all had this really like curtains of blonde hair. And that's what it looked like. It looked like I was on the set of the Brady Bunch. And I'm looking around at my mom thinking, this isn't any better than where I was before, because I'm also the only one here. And then this woman comes in to the room to greet all these new students and parents, and she's in a dashiki, which is traditional African, garb. She has an afro at a time when most Black people were straightening their hair
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
assimilate. And she was brown skinned, and she wasn't wearing any makeup, which was, it was kind of hippie time. So there were a lot of people that weren't wearing makeup. And she had commanded that room, man. Like everybody paid attention as soon as she walked in. She was respected. You could feel it. She was admired. You could feel that. And at that moment, in a way that I had never been before, I was so proud to be Black, because the most respected, admired person in the room was Black.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And it never, I wasn't not proud of it before,
Mhm.
but I hadn't ever been filled with that sense of pride until that moment.
Well, and to see somebody in leadership, right?
Yes.
It wasn't just another mom walking in the room.
Right.
She
Yes.
commanded the space. So
She did. Yes, she did.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, um, in your book, you also talk about your addictions
Yes.
and your sobriety.
Yes.
Um, what I found interesting, I saw in one of your reels, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you actually didn't start anything until your children were born. Did I hear that correctly in one of the reels? And I only asked that question because I also want to ask, did you have postpartum depression? Was that what brought that on?
Both of those are very good questions. So my history with drug and alcohol use is really interesting. When I was 19, I spent a year like doing cocaine with a pimp slash drug dealer guy. Not 365 days, but I would drop in his place on the weekends. And it wasn't like a dark drug den. It was quite glamorous and fun. Like
Mhm.
he would have these big parties. I was like one of his favorites, and we would just get high on the weekends, and then I'd go back to my regular life. But I did that for a year. And then one day, I was there a day longer than I was supposed to be. I was like doing coke with him, and it spilled over into a Monday. And I was supposed to pick up my mom at the airport, and I had somebody else pick her up because I wasn't done. And she and my dad got together with me, her in person, my dad by phone from Florida. And they're like, "We're worried about you. You're getting really thin. We want you to go to a 12-step program." And I was like, "Oh, hell no. I don't have a problem." Because to me, I didn't, because I
Right,
could
'cause it's
stop.
just weekends, right? You thought,
Yeah,
yeah, that's not addiction if it's just the
right.
weekends, right?
Exactly. So I stopped. I never went back there again, like lost his phone number to show them that I was fine. And then through my 20s, so I was 19 then. So throughout my 20s, I drank socially, didn't really like it, but I drank socially. I had fun. I partied with
Mhm.
people, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Drugs weren't really part of the story then. It was more just like, let's go out and party. And I kind of gave you a clip of my life as a publicist. It was kind of required when I would go out, we would have drinks. And um, I was 32 when my first son was born. So I got married and um, had him. And then I was 34 when my second son was born. And to answer your question, I thought maybe I did have postpartum depression. I'm sure that it was undiagnosed. But I asked my doctor, and he kind of waved me off and said, "Oh, just have a glass of wine at night. You'll be fine." It's
It's the
it's
dirty little secret, by the way.
yeah, and
Doctors do not, they do not talk to mothers about the possibility of something real happening in the body called postpartum depression. They're like, "Oh, the blues. Oh, you're just
yeah,
you're not getting enough sleep. Have a glass of wine so, you sleep a little." Yeah. It's a
it's
shame.
easily dismissed. I think
Yeah.
probably less now, but
Mhm.
this was in,
Yes.
1998
Mhm.
and 1999.
Yes.
His thinking was that having the babies back to back the way that I did was probably I just needed time to recover. He's a really nice guy. I think he just really missed it.
Mhm.
And there's this thing about me where I present really well regardless. So I'm put together. I walk in, you rarely see me dragging, almost never. Like I don't exhibit any symptoms of anything ever. And
Mhm.
that's intentional.
Mhm.
Not so much in sobriety. I've become more real with who I am, but up until then, you got a front, you got the facade like a film studio where it's just the front of the building. There's nothing behind it.
Yes.
So, not that he shouldn't have further investigated, but I'm sure to him, I didn't look like I did.
Mhm.
So, but another doctor, my general practitioner, about a year later, maybe 2 years later, said, "Look, you're not sleeping. Let's get you Ambien to."
Oh, yes.
And I had not heard of it at that point. It
Mm.
was, um, I don't think it was new, but it was not known to me. So I kind of set myself up so I could try it that night. My kids were little. They were like 3 and 4. And so I had my mom in town. My ex-husband, who was then my husband, was away for work a lot. So there were a lot of nights where it was just us. And this was one of those weeks where it was just me and the kids. And so my mom came to run interference in case they woke up so that I could get a good night's sleep. And I took that first Ambien and I fell in love. Like I loved it. I loved the feeling I had before I fell asleep. I loved the sleep that I had. I loved the dreams. I woke up feeling refreshed and energetic. I wanted to hang out with my kids. Like it was, everything was better after
Mhm.
that Ambien, after that good night's sleep. And, I write in my book that the first two words that popped into my mind after the first one were, again, please. Like
Mm.
I just wanted it again. And it was like that Hemingway quote. It was gradually and then suddenly. Um, at first it was as prescribed. I got 30 pills. It took me a year to take them.
Mhm.
Second year, I was taking one every night, also as prescribed. By the third year, my tolerance was rising. So I needed like 1.5 or 1.25 to get to sleep. And then probably by the end of that year, I was taking 2 a night to get to sleep. And then, 6 years in, which is when my addiction really took a hold of me, I was taking as many as I could get at night.
Interesting.
And and
Mm.
and also having to have, like, I would chip like the tips of the pills off and swallow them during the day. They wouldn't put me to sleep, but they would regulate my system because I was in detox and withdrawal without them.
Wow.
So I needed to have some Ambien in my system at all times, but it couldn't be enough to get me loaded or else I would go to sleep. So it was this, and Holly, I was the parent association president at my kids' school. I had just been asked to join the board. I was throwing dinner parties. I played tennis with the girls. I was working out every day. I was, going to premieres. So I had to fortify myself so that I could continue to live that life so no one would examine what was happening with me in the Ambien.
Hmm. A lot of people didn't realize, the doctors said it was not addictive if you asked, because I went on it too for postpartum depression. So you're preaching to the choir, as they say. I did not run into the same, level that you
Yeah.
did, um, but the doctors were not very clear about that. And, wow, it's amazing how you created this like twisted routine to get through the day using it like little bits of it so that you could stay
Mhm.
level and present and present a certain way. That wow, I can't even imagine how hard that was for you.
I mean, it was Herculean isn't the right word. It was more Sisyphusian, like that boulder that I just kept pushing up the hill and I never
Mm,
got to the top. Every day required so much energy. I was exhausted. I was
hmm.
exhausted. But without Ambien, I couldn't sleep at this point. I had messed up all like bludgeoned all those receptors that release melatonin and like allow you and serotonin, like everything
Mhm.
that was good, my brain wouldn't release unless I took Ambien. So I was in a constant state of anxiety without it.
Wow. So would you say then Ambien was your gateway into it that maybe led to, I don't know, other drugs or alcohol or something like that? Or
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, Ambien was the addiction. It
mm,
it didn't it didn't lead me anywhere else.
okay.
Eventually, I needed alcohol to boost it.
Mm.
I didn't drink just for drinking's sake, kind of ever, except for in my 20s in that period that I described, which felt very typical.
Yeah, I
It
think that was for sure.
but yeah, I kept, vodka in my rain boots in my closet so that I could drink enough to boost the Ambien's effect, to give it the kick that it needed so that it would work the way I needed it to work. I mean, I went to treatment for an Ambien addiction. I wasn't doing opiates. I wasn't into cocaine. I wasn't drinking aside from that. I went to treatment to kick Ambien.
It's crazy.
It
What a
is.
crazy story. Oh my gosh.
I
You
know.
just don't hear that. It's always about opioids and things like that. I mean, like I said, I took Ambien. So like it feels um it's so accessible to everybody. Like you just don't think of it as something that somebody would need to get sober from. You just don't.
Totally. No, and I always like to mention that it's a good drug when it's used as prescribed. It can be a really effective drug for a lot of people. It's not meant to be used for more than 10 days in a row, ever.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's supposed to reset your system. And for that purpose, it's excellent.
Mhm.
And for most people, it is non-habit forming when used as prescribed.
Right.
But I used it so far out of prescription, the doctors were lenient because I had, my inability to sleep prior to the Ambien was so great. And my anxiety that came with the inability to sleep was so great. I really felt like I needed it in order to show up for my family the way that I wanted to.
And the doctors did
Co-sign,
what they needed to do. Yeah, because you were good at building the facade, right?
excellent at it.
Yeah. Are you still building them?
Oh no, gosh, it's like I built a city and I've been taking it down stone by stone for the last 15 years.
Nice,
Like I got
nice.
this building cleared and I've got this building cleared and yeah, no, I am not building them anymore.
Dismantling it all.
I am dismantling it and it's work. It's not like
Yes.
poof, it's gone. I have to, you know, it's that chop wood, carry water thing, sometimes just keeping my head down and doing the work. And I happen to be with a man who I've been with for the last almost 15 years, who is the opposite of me. He never had a front. He never presented himself as anything other than he was. And because we met in treatment, um, when I finally went in July of 2008, um, I was not trying to impress him. I didn't at all. Like I wasn't fronting there because I didn't
You
care about
couldn't.
any of those people.
Right, right.
And I was devastated. I was just devastated to be there. But so he met me without the facade, and that's who he was first attracted to, and that's who he's now fallen in love with.
That's
So
beautiful.
yeah, I learned from him how to be myself because that's the person he appreciates the most.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, there's another piece of connection I'd like to tap into. Again, it was a reel that I listened to that you posted where we identify ourselves as uh, mother, sister, spouse, lover, friend, all of these different things. And because we live to, um, a lot of us live in that place of identity, right? Who are we?
Yeah.
And if somebody asks you, oh, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, we fall into that. So the reel that sparked me was you had gone to the grocery store
Mhm.
and you instinctively went to put milk in your cart and you don't even like milk. In fact, we know you like oat milk. um, and it was really, I actually had a moment when you were talking about that, that you identified, you were part of a couple. That was your identification. You were the wife half of this. And in doing so, you would go to the grocery store and you would get milk. Like that was part of your life. And I know this seems like a strange thing to back into this, but what I sensed is at that moment, and here's where connection comes in for me, you lost your connection to self, to who you actually were, and you couldn't necessarily fall back on the identities that are in our back pocket. You show up to a cocktail party and someone says, oh, so what do you do, or who are you? And right away you fall, oh, I'm a podcaster, I'm a writer, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, whatever. And you had like this existential crisis with a carton of milk.
I did.
So can I ask you to share a little about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking me about that. I think, I read this article a couple years ago about role exhaustion for women, that we occupy so many different roles it is just exhausting for us. And it really hit home for me. I identified so strongly with that. And I remember when actually on the board where I actually still sit, I'm still on the board of that school. when I was a couple years sober, they had us do this exercise where they ask you, you've probably done this at some point. I think it's like a corporate retreat thing where they ask you who you are over and over again. So like the first 3 times you can answer anyway. They like, who are you? I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins. I'm, a mom. I'm blah, blah, blah. The second time you answer, you can't answer with a role. So you have to answer with something else. And then the third time you answer, you can't repeat any of your previous answers. So you go really deep, right?
We are atoms. We are energy
Yes,
bouncing off of it.
exactly. But it was really a struggle for me because I had, as I talked about, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I gave up my PR company when my kids were born. And I was a full-time mom. I was a full-time wife. I was not a writer professionally. I was not anything professionally. I was a mom professionally. And I was, identified heavily with being, my ex-husband's wife. Like that was, and that was a great identity. As
Mhm.
soon as I said it, people were like, oh, wow.
Right.
They saw me differently. They treated me differently because I was his wife. And that felt really good.
Mhm.
Weird, because I knew it wasn't about me,
Mhm.
but I still got all the goodies. I got all the perks of being, in this marriage and being my kid's mom.
Mhm.
Like my being their mom, oh, they're such good boys and they're so, oh, I love your son. Like that felt like credit for me, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I took
I have
all
a
that.
son too. I get it.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure there was a lot of ego feeding in that for me. Like it felt really good. And to be kind of on this pedestal in my community where I held a leadership position in the school community. And then in one fell swoop over a summer, get divorced and go to treatment for drugs and alcohol. Um, Felt like all of a sudden I'm a nobody. I'm not his wife anymore. My perfect motherhood will be under fire because what kind of perfect mother does drugs and goes to treatment? That's ridiculous. And I don't have a job. So I really don't have an identity.
Mm.
I compartmentalized that when I first got sober. I couldn't think about all that. I just had to do what was in front of me because it was overwhelming.
Mhm. Of course.
But when I was so this is like I'm a couple months divorced and what that story you're talking about, and a few months sober, and the boys are at practice and I, leave them at practice and run to the grocery store to get what we need for that night. And I'm there in front of in the dairy section and I pull that milk carton out and my hand, actually, I don't even pull it out. My hand hesitates before I can grab it. And I'm seized with this idea that this isn't for you. Who are you buying this for? Kids don't drink it. You don't like it. Who's it for?
Mm.
And I start crying. And I'm kind of paralyzed there. And, like the very helpful people that are stalking the different cases. One of them, like, I mean, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, are you okay?
Mm.
Is there anything, I think he said, is there anything I can help you with? I think that's what it
Aw,
was.
that was sweet though, right?
Very, very
Like,
sweet.
nice to know there's some humanity left.
And I'm sure, they don't want people crying in their store.
Yeah,
Either.
right?
Not good for business.
I couldn't
Um,
decide between milk and oat milk. It's horrible.
um, but I had that realization, like, if this isn't for you, what is for you? What
Mm.
do you like? What do you want in your refrigerator? What do you want in your life? Who do you want to be? And it was all in those brief moments with my hand, hesitating over a carton of milk. That, and I don't know if I would describe it as a crisis, but it was more of like a breakthrough,
Mm.
like a realization, like it broke through all the compartments that I had built to kind of keep myself safe. And I had this realization that this is something to look at now. You're a few months sober. You're a little bit out of this marriage. start looking at who you are. And so that part of my work, of the many pieces of aspects of my work, and this is all spiritual work I'm talking about, or health, like self-care. I don't know if I would call it spiritual, but not logistical, not work for,
Mhm.
not transactional work.
Mhm.
That work began then.
Incredible. And do you feel grounded that you have found that sense of self through that journey?
Oh, I definitely know what I like now.
Yes, but you were asking yourself bigger questions than the milk, right? So,
I know what
do you
I like,
okay.
not just to eat and to drink, but I know what I like in my life. I don't say yes out of obligation anymore. If I say yes to something that I don't want to do, you're going to get a very clear explanation as to why I'm doing it.
Mm,
Like, I hate spa days. I hate baby showers and bachelorette parties. They're so not my thing. My
okay.
friends know this about me now. I
Mhm.
used to go anyway and just pretend like I like them. Now they know this about me. So when they invite me, it'll be with, "We'd love to see you there, but I understand how you feel about them. So if you don't want to show up, you don't have to." And then sometimes I'll say, "No, I don't like them, but I'm coming for you because I want
Mm,
to support you."
I love
So
that.
they know that I'm not there enjoying myself like everybody else, just oohing and eyeing over each baby gift that's opened, which I find to be torturous. But
Yes, I'm there with you.
I am coming there because I love them and I want to support them. So I'm very clear about that so that there isn't any mistake. And I'm clear about everything that I can, that I can be clear about anyway. Everything that I'm aware of, I'm clear about.
It's, amazing the power of the word yes,
Hmm.
and equally as such, the power of the word no.
Yeah.
And, I think it was Shonda Rhimes that wrote that book, My
Book of
Year of
Yes.
Yes. Is
Yes.
that what
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was?
The year of yes. Yeah.
And, I have often threatened to myself quietly, I haven't said it out loud, but I guess I am saying out loud now, that I would like to write a book for myself that is a year of yes and a year of no.
Yeah.
Just
Equally important.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's great that you found your
A year of no.
yeah, like when to say no, like you're for you it was simultaneous, right? You always said yes to things you didn't like to do and now you say yes and no,
Yes.
even in the same breath, but you understand uh yes, I will come. No, I do not like the baby shower. Yes, I
Right.
am coming for you. Like you have such clarity on it now, which is really great.
Yes, and that is the result of this work and the distance, I think, for me from drugs and alcohol. I think that distance was painfully clear. It made things painfully clear for a while, and now that there's no pain involved, it's just clear.
Mhm, mhm. Are y Is there anything I'm not asking you, Laura?
Oh, um, gosh, I don't know. I we didn't really talk about Scott. Um, we could talk about him a little bit if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Share.
So the reason I like to talk about him for a variety of reasons. Like I said, we met in treatment in July of 2008. So it's almost 15 years now. And then, the what we did was he went back to Utah where he's from. I came back to LA. Eventually he moved here and lived separately from me. For 6 years. We dated for
Mm,
6 years. And then we moved in together. We really wanted to take care of our respective kids. He has two daughters. I have two sons. I wanted my sons to feel safe in their home. Not I had already, but we had disrupted that safety by their dad not living with us anymore. And I wanted them to not feel like someone else moved in, even though it wouldn't be to take his place, but
right.
just in that place.
Mhm, mhm.
And a lot of people disagree. Like, you've got to do you, you've got to find your happiness, but this is the way we chose to do it. So he was available to his daughters and I was available to my sons, and I devoted myself to their care and attention during those years. And when I decided to write this book, which was in the summer of 2020, he was kind of like, okay, we've got the podcast going, we've got to, because he produces the podcast. He's also my engineer. He's like he oversees all of the social media, the YouTube, the website, most of the marketing. In fact, all the marketing. I just show up with the mic and the guest. Like, that's what I do.
Man, I want your job now. I want you. Where's Scott? Can he come help me?
Yes, where is Scott? Is he downstairs? But when I decided to really write this book in earnest, when I had an agent who said, how quickly can you write this? Which happened in November of 2020. I was like, okay, hun, that's what I call him. If I'm going to get this done, I'm just going to devote myself to it. So my plan is to work on the podcast until 11, like do my meditation, do my workout, work on the podcast until 11. And then from 11 to 7, write. And I was like, is that okay with you? With that doesn't leave much time for us. And I'm aware of that, but I don't know how to get this done otherwise. I don't know how to do it piecemeal. I don't know if I would be able to complete it if I did it here and there. And we really talked about it. He didn't just say, oh yeah, I'm 100% supportive. We really discussed the impact that it would have on our relationship. We did that for a few days. And, he came back to the table with like, I'm going to support you however you need to be supported during this time. And so I went to work, and so did he. So he, I worked on the podcast with him. Then he finished everything else. Then, Holly, I went vegan. I went vegan 3 years ago. So he decided to go vegan with me after a couple days of protest and go grocery shopping.
And a steak.
Right. He went grocery shopping while I was working. He came home. He took care of everything in the house. He cooked me dinner every night that I was working, called me down for dinner at 7 when it was time for me to knock off. And he did that the entire time I wrote this book.
What a gift.
What a gift. What a gift. We have a sober home. Yeah, he's been sober this time, like we've been sober together. We have a meeting in our house, a recovery meeting every Saturday. So my kids have grown up in a sober home. Their dad's not sober, so they've also grown up in his home, and there's very, kind of just like typical drinking that happens there. It's not excessive. It's fine. But they know that both are possible. They know that you can absolutely have a, my ex-husband's side of the family is Jewish. So there's like, all the high holidays, there's usually wine involved, Manischewitz, which I found to be delicious.
Oh my God, you're killing me. That is like the worst. That's like NyQuil to me. It's
No,
awful.
nobody likes it. I
No.
wanted more of it. I loved it. It was like the sweetest grape juice. But anyway.
That's because you were used to putting all the sugar in your coffee.
Yes. Full circle back to that. So, so they've grown up with both. They know that I have a ton of fun. I love my trips and my vacations. We have Sunday dinner at my house every weekend. I mean, every Sunday we have dinner here with his daughters if they're in town, with my sons, with my mom, with my brother, with my son's girlfriends. Like, we gather and we have a great time every Sunday. And there's nothing missing, with the fact that I'm sober. They're not ashamed of it. They understand it. They understand why. They're grateful for it. And they don't need to talk about it. Like, it doesn't need to be the subject of discussion, but they're happy to explain it to anybody who asks. I've heard them do that in this very kind of matter-of-fact way. Usually brief. No, my mom doesn't drink anymore. She stopped drinking years ago. She got sober. And that's it. That's all the required explanation. They're great fans of Scott because he makes me happy. So they want, obviously, I think, I don't know if obviously, but my boys want me to be happy. They've moved on. They've both moved out. They have their lives with their girlfriends. And I think it gives them a sense of solace knowing that Scotty is here with me. And I like being alone, honestly. I love my own company, but I love having a companion as well. And I think that is helpful for them. I think that's comfort.
Definitely. I think so too. I just love how centered you are. It's really amazing. I think that a lot of people will see themselves in the pages of your book, and I can't tell you how thankful I am that our interview landed on this day. It was maybe just a coincidence, but
I
I'm
don't believe.
so excited for you. This is so
Yeah.
great. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you so much.
This is awesome. I'm going to put all the stuff in the show notes so everybody can find you and follow you and get your book. I will go get mine as well because I haven't had a chance. So I look forward to learning even more about you, Laura. Thank you for coming on Coffee Culture.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap. We did it.
Awesome.
That was awesome. Share your thoughts and ideas on coffee culture. You could put them in the reviews on Apple Podcasts or DM me on Instagram. And if you'd like to support an indie podcaster, there is a link in the show notes for buying me a coffee. Please subscribe and share a cup of coffee culture with your friends. This season is produced by Pale Blue Studios.